I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Paris, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. And apologies for getting this out a little bit late. I just got back from camping. I had to catch up on the event. Did not watch this live, but what a good card this was. And I think the obvious pick here for biggest stock riser on this card was the man in the main event, Renato Moicano. Again, if you guys think there's someone else that deserves a higher praise on this video, please let me know in the comments. I always love to hear your top 3 stock risers and top 3 stock droppers in the comments. That would be awesome. But yeah, Money Moicano, I didn't see this coming. He looked great. Dominant win over Benoit Saint-Denis. The fact that he did it in enemy territory, the fact that there was no excuse of a staph infection or anything like that. Moicano went in there and absolutely looked like his name, Money, getting it done with a TKO finish, doctor stoppage in the second round. I mean, this was almost over in the first round. What can you say? I mean, Moicano's in a great position right now for himself. He wants to fight Paddy Pimblett next. I'm totally fine with that. Don't really need to see that on the Ultimate Fighter season and tying these two guys up. Moicano's not exactly young either. Going to be... well, he is 35 right now, so I don't think that's the way to go. But if they want to do that fight next, that makes sense. I don't think Dan Hooker makes sense. I think Hooker's done a little bit more in that weight class than seeing that fight. But Renato Moicano, Paddy Pimblett, any card you want, totally fine by me. But this was a huge win for Moicano. Again, going into enemy territory, taking it, getting it done over Benoit Saint-Denis via TKO. And, his only loss right now at lightweight in the last little bit is the Fiziev fight. Outside of that, I mean, that Dos Anjos fight was a catchweight fight. He's looking pretty good right now and really hitting his stride right now in the lightweight division. Okay, second biggest stock riser on this card. To me, if this is more of an implications one, maybe as opposed to an entertaining one, and that is Nasruddin Imavov. Again, getting it done over Brendan Allen. He has really turned a page since losing to Sean Strickland, which again was a short notice fight, but that's 3 straight wins, and these are all good victories here. Dolidze, Cannonier. I know Cannonier had a bit of an iffy stoppage there, but beating Brendan Allen, defeating him the way he did, very, very good win here. I think the obvious fight for him is Borrahio. That's the fight to make in this weight class as middleweight's a little bit logjam right now. We, most likely going to have Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis next. We're going to have Hamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker. So I think this is sort of the fight behind that, but good win for Imavov. Again, making strides. Looks a lot different than the guy that, lost to Phil Hawes a few years ago. He's looked pretty good outside of that. Like I said, that one loss to Sean Strickland and even the Chris Curtis no contest. That was a fight he was looking good in prior to the Clash of Heads happening. I thought he looked great. So big win there for Imavov. He's the other big stock riser on this card. And my next stock riser is someone that, was favored in this fight, but he went in there and made a statement, and that was Brian Battle. I don't know what this guy needs to do to get a ranked opponent. Seems to have improved since that loss to what was it? I was going to say Renato Moicano, but not him. Rinat Fakhretdinov, that is unbeaten in his last 4 fights. The fight against Ange, he was winning as well. Really like what Battle did here. Jusei, very good striker, City Kickboxing product, to go in there and knock him out. Very, very, very impressive. Love the post-fight speech. What can you say about Brian Battle? I think he won a lot of fans over, even some French fans. We saw this after the fact with him going in there and talking a little smack. Brian Battle, to me, was one of the big highlights on this card. He has to be the other stock riser on this card. And then going to give an honorable mention here to Chris Duncan, underdog going into the fight against Oki. Goes out there, gets the first round finish. Chris Duncan now 12-2. Nice bounce back from that loss to Manel Torres. He gets an honorable mention for me as well. And there's a few other honorable mentions I'm sure you could go with, but those were some of the ones that stood out to me on this card as far as stock risers at UFC Paris. All right, let's talk about the stock droppers. And people may disagree with me on this one, but I'm going to, in terms of where I'm placing him, but I'll explain why in a second. And that is Brendan Allen. Now, listen, Brendan Allen had a lot of endorsements going into this fight. Even John Anik, who I interviewed prior to this card happening, mentioned that he felt like, Brendan Allen was knocking on the door for a title shot. And we've heard people talk about Brendan Allen being a future champion. Unfortunately, this is another example of him getting a good opportunity and it not going his way. And you look at the win streak he's had, losing to Imavov. And the thing is that Allen won the first round, but he's not even doing it in a style that is appeasing to the fans. He's just going in there and wrestling his opponents. You got to do more than that. Now, I know Allen's only 28. There's still room for improvement, I think, but this was a tough loss for him. He had plenty of notice. This was a fight that, remember a couple fights back, he didn't want to fight Roman Dolidze. He gets the Chris Curtis win, which to me was not that impressive. And then he loses to Imavov in a fight where Imavov clearly won. Allen's stock has certainly taken a hit. I think at this point, you got to do the fight with Marvin Vettori. There's a lot of bad blood there. I think him and Vettori are kind of in the same spot, other than the fact that Vettori is a little bit older, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to double check that. I feel like Vettori's older. I think he's in his 30s now, right? So yeah, Vettori's 31, Allen's 28. That's a grudge match we've wanted to see. Let's get round 2 of this. We saw round 1 in the casino. Let's see round 2 take place in the octagon. These two were supposed to fight before. I think they're kind of in the same spot. And even if you look at the rankings, I think it makes a lot of sense there as well. So yeah, Brendan Allen, unfortunately to me, the biggest stock dropper on this card, just because had he won this fight, he'd be kind of in that mix of, middleweight contenders. Because, while I just mentioned that you've obviously got Whitaker and Chimaev ahead of him, and you've got obviously the potential Strickland and DDP fight. If there's an injury in any of those fights, the winner, Imavov could even step in now since he won. But had Allen won this fight, he could have been an option. He could have made some noise. Allen likes to talk some smack. The UFC likes that. I think had Allen won this, he could have been on the short list for getting a short notice opportunity in case something happened in any of these fights. So the fact that that's missed again, the fact that it's again an opportunity where, Allen had a good opponent here and he could have won. To me, he's the biggest stock dropper on this card. Okay, my second pick for biggest stock dropper has got to be Benoit Saint-Denis. What's the excuse now, right? He had a full camp. This is in Paris. He had everything lined up for him on a silver platter, and it didn't go his way. He didn't perform very well. In fact, he was almost finished in that first round. If he wasn't so resilient, this would have been a first round finish and it would have looked even worse for Benoit Saint-Denis. But what can you say now? It's, and I think for a lot of people like myself, I put a lot of value in Benoit Saint-Denis, bet on potential. I talked about this, going into the fight, is that you're kind of betting on potential. I think a lot of that potential is squashed. Now, the reason I have him in number 2 over number 1 with Brendan Allen is that I think had Saint-Denis won this, I still think there's a couple fights ahead of him. If he wanted to get the title shot, I think with Brendan Allen winning against Imavov, I think he would have been closer to a title shot, especially with the fact that Allen was coming off a win and Imavov was coming off a loss. So I think that, I know even the UFC had mentioned if Benoit Saint-Denis had beaten Poirier, that he was on a short list for being in title contention. I think with the way he lost to Poirier, I still think he was a couple fights away, whereas I think Brendan Allen, had he won this fight, he would have been closer to a title shot. So I actually think the stock drop for Allen's a bit worse, just because I think he was closer to title contention than Benoit Saint-Denis was, but they are the same age. But again, Saint-Denis getting finished in this fight, not a good look, especially when you have the full camp. And again, there was all this talk about the staph infection and all that. Didn't really matter. Saint-Denis, got dominated in this fight. And now it's back to the drawing board for him. Not really sure what's next for him. A fight that I think would be kind of interesting, could be like in a revenge angle as well, is maybe you do Grant Dawson and him. If Grant Dawson beats Rafa Garcia, there's a little bit of revenge there with Saint-Denis defeating Dawson's good friend and teammate Thiago Moises. I think that could make some sense. But yeah, the UFC's got to figure out what they're going to do with Saint-Denis, because he had so much momentum. Now he's got back-to-back losses, back-to-back stoppage losses. That certainly takes a hit on his stock. And again, I'll say it one more time, guys. I have no issue if you wanted to put Saint-Denis in the number 1 spot. I just think that Allen was a bit closer to a title shot, so his stock takes a bit more of a tumble there. The other stock dropper on this card, we got to go all the way back to the opening bout. Oki, he was favored in this fight. He was supposed to win. I know not a huge favorite. He was minus 190 here, but to get finished in the first round like that, and I know, I don't think there was a ton of stock going in with him. He'd only had, a UFC, just the one UFC fight, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then one on Contender Series. I just think there was a lot of hype behind him. People were buying into it, and he didn't really deliver in this fight. Again, I think part of this, too, is the way he lost, getting finished in the first round. So Oki certainly takes a big hit on this card as well. So those are my stock risers and stock droppers here, everyone. Just to do a quick recap, we're going to go with Moicano, Imavov, and Brian Battle as the biggest stock risers. And the biggest stock droppers for me had to be Brendan Allen, Benoit Saint-Denis, and Oki going into this one. But would love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Again, I know for some people these are obvious. I'm just trying to, look at this a different way. And when it comes to context and everything else, when it comes to picking these choices, I don't necessarily think I have all the right answers, but I'd love to hear from you in the comments. You guys just let me know where you're leaning here on that. And by the way, I see I used the wrong graphic here for UFC preview show, so just ignore that for a second. This is the stock report as well. I just got back from camping, guys, so forgive me a little bit here. But yeah, let me know in the comments which way you're going. 3 biggest stock risers, 3 biggest stock droppers. I try and do this for every single card that I can. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.